everybody, and welcome to a new episode of the Indie Diaries podcast, a new Indie Diary, showing the human stories behind indie game development. And this is your loyal Indie Diarist and host, Anthony L. Wolf, as usual. Today, we have an Indie Diary with someone very special from the indie game development community, a studio named Why Not AI. And before you jump to conclusions, I assure you, the name of the studio does not mean what you think it means. But Tim here will explain it during the course of the episode. The guys got in touch with me. They've just released HPL Nyarlathotep Rising, and from the name you can tell that it's something very Lovecraftian, which is one of the main reasons why I decided to invite them on the show. Before we get into the episode, I want to shout out to my amazing Patreons, Zagini, Fishbone Dev, and Peleg. You guys are incredible. Thank you for supporting me every single month. And listeners, if you want to support the show too, which is entirely listener supported at the moment, you can go to patreon.com/theindiediarist and gain access to episodes in advance, exclusive content, and a lot more for just £1.25 as a starting tier. But now, let's get into this Indie Diary number 67 with Tim Wiseman from Why Not AI. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of the Indie Diaries podcast. This one is with Tim Wiseman from Why Not AI. We'll dive into the name and all the story of you guys. But first of all, Tim, tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do, where you're based, and what you're working on right now, most importantly, or what has just released, I would say.
Yeah, very good. Thanks, Ant. So pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation. We're here today to talk mostly about a new release, a game called HPL Nyarlathotep Rising. So the Cthulhu fans out there will make sense of that. Before we go and talk about that game, a little bit about me. So Ant and I have just worked out we live on different sides of the River Thames in London. Yeah. I've had a long and boring career in IT and finance, but all the time there was this creative side that wasn't quite getting the itch scratched. And I'm also a long-term tabletop role player.
That was going to be one of my questions. Okay, great.
yeah, and that's how I found this project. So I've done a couple of scenarios for Chaosium.
Nice.
One back in about 2006 called Tatters of the King. And I think that was well received. It was translated into German and French and Spanish, so it saw some new life there.
Great.
And I've also got another scenario with them waiting for publication. The Why Not AI studio found me through the tabletop role-playing scenario. So quite unusually, I edged into computer gaming through tabletop role-playing with the brief that if you can do this for an audience of tabletop role-players, well, this is a create-your-own-adventure type game. So
fits very well.
It will use very similar bits of your brain, and you're trying to provide a similar experience for the audience. So in some ways, you could look at this as a solo tabletop role-playing. Albeit, the gaming mechanic allowed me to do some things you cannot do with tabletop role-playing. So it was, I quickly saw that it was going to be a joy to write.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting. I mean, of course, I wanted to dive into the tabletop aspect of Nyarlathotep Rising, but yeah, as a tabletop player myself, I did enter tabletop via Call of Cthulhu. So I started with maybe a few scenarios here and there, but then I became a keeper for a group of friends, and then I wrote my own scenario, which was self-published. Not a lot of people know that, even in my community, but it was self-published with the Miskatonic Repository. It's called The Hounds of Salem. Became a silver bestseller, so kind of well received. That was also translated in French by just another independent scenario writer. Really love the Call of Cthulhu tabletop RPG, and I think it's just amazing. And it's good that we're here to talk about it today. This is going to be an unusual episode, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, so Tim, before we dive into your story and how you managed to, how you found this adventure, let's say, of developing a game or actually being part of a development team for a game, let's start with a little icebreaker, a prologue section. And as you know, this is timed. I'm going to ask you as many questions as I can in just 60 seconds, and I'm going to ask you to answer as many as you can. So just answer just short, punchy answers will do. This is just to break the ice, and then we'll just relax, slow down, and just have a little bit more of a relaxed time with the other questions that I have in mind. So, are you ready for this little segment? I'm going to start a little countdown timer for this.
Ready.
Okay, perfect. So, let me experiment with a new thing that I haven't tried before. I've got a little soundboard here on Riverside. I've got a little sound that I can enable. So let's try, and let me know if you can hear this. You should be just now.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, let's go. Perfect. So what's the first game you ever fell in love with?
Oh my goodness. It would have been Dungeons and Dragons.
Perfect. Yeah, no, that counts. If you could be a game character for a day, who would you be? Or actually, a class for a day, who would you be?
Oh, a class. I think a thief.
A thief? Okay, that's interesting, right? What's your favorite gaming snack? What do you usually eat when you're on tabletop sessions?
Oh, dried nuts and fruit, I think. I try and keep it a little healthier, but not always.
That's nice. Okay, what's the most underrated tabletop game everyone needs to play?
Oh, Unknown Armies.
Okay, great. Right. Pitch HPL in one sentence.
Tell a globe-trotting story of Lovecraftian investigation, madness, horror, and even love through 3 very different heroes.
Okay, perfect. And we're actually at time. That was nice. Okay, we can stop the countdown there. You answered most of the questions that I had, so this was one of the most successful icebreaker sections so far. Now we can relax a little bit. We can slow down, and we can just get into the mood of the episode, which is actually very chill, believe it or not. So yeah, well, I mean, you mentioned you got into game development through tabletop gaming, and I think there are some overlaps there. I do believe, as a writer myself, that there are some things that from tabletop design or game design apply to video game design as well. But let's start from the beginning. So let's start with the origins section of the episode. So what would you say is your earliest or fondest memory that involves video games, or if it doesn't involve video games, tabletop gaming specifically?
Yes, so tabletop gaming, I was getting into this very early. I remember playing Dungeons and Dragons when my brothers and I had no idea how to play it. We came to it through wargaming. So I was originally an old wargamer, and we had an idea that each player had to control a number of characters. We really didn't have an idea of it at all. And then I went to university and got a better idea of it. But I also joined a club that used to exist on Victoria Street in London, run in the old Esso building there. And there were some brilliant games players there, board games as well. So we played a huge amount of board games. Cosmic Encounter, a few people will know that game. Lovely old game. And then tons of different role-playing experience. Traveller, Bushido, Judge Dredd role-playing game, and then always the standby D&D campaign. So that was really good because you had people who knew games and could explain them well and get you up and running quickly. And I soon realized that this was a joy. But for me, gaming has always been something that's very much there. I'm also a big chess player. So at that same time, I was playing chess for a chess club up in North London, Enfield, and that was always my escape. Strangely, I'm not that competitive, so chess was a bit painful sometimes because you feel your losses harder than you celebrate your victories, or at least I did. So I just loved role-playing. And for the longest time, I mean, we're in a golden age of role-playing now.
Yeah.
For the longest time, I could not work out why it wasn't more popular than it was. And I am so pleased to see that it now has this almost a cachet to it. Because for an awful long time, through the 90s and early 2000s, it was not something you admitted to.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like video games in a way, but
Yeah.
I've seen a resurgence of tabletop, and that's when I approached it for the first time in during COVID, I would say. But I was starting to approach it even before then, because when I moved to the UK, which was now almost 8 years ago, I found this actual play podcast, which is called the Glass Cannon podcast. You probably know it. And it is it captured me, the way they were telling the story, the way the game master was telling this story. So I was like, this is something I might enjoy myself. Maybe I'll look into it. Then COVID hit, and I started playing a little bit of D&D. But then I found the London RPG community, and big shout out to the London RPG community, and that really got me into Call of Cthulhu, like very, very much deeply. And then in 2021, I worked on my own scenario, but I don't really play that much these days, but I always want to go back because it's always fun, and it was so fun to run scenarios myself as a keeper. So yeah, I can relate with that kind of sentiment. And when I discovered it, I was like, it's absolutely insane. This isn't more mainstream or more popular. So yeah, I totally relate with that.
Yeah, and it went through those long doldrums where you didn't really, yes, you didn't really admit it. And if you did, people started asking, okay, do you dress up? Do you do this, do that? And you had to patiently say no. And at the same time, you're thinking, my goodness, when you're in a good group or when you're enjoying a game, it's a remarkably shared creative endeavor, which I have not really seen anywhere else. I haven't quite seen it created in the same way, recreated in the same way anywhere else. Now, video games, I have played much less. So when I was, when video games were first coming out, I think I played SimCity.
Ah, right. Yeah, no, that's...
I realized that I loved it so much that, well... I felt that this could be my life if I'm not careful. So I actually took a big step back because I realized that, if one has an addictive personality, you can really get swept up in those games. And I realized, okay, I love to read. I love to do so many other things. Yeah. I feel this is almost too it's too much of a siren call.
Okay, I see.
So I didn't play games for a long time. The last game I played and really got addicted to was Cultist Simulator.
Oh, I don't know that one, but it sounds right up my alley because I like those sim games. So, yeah.
I think it would be. It looks like a card-playing game on screen, but it's telling you a story through little bits of text. Book of Owls is by the same makers. It's very evocative. You're basically you're playing from the cultist side of a Call of Cthulhu game, and that was addictive. And then when we started writing this game, I realized I needed to see what other games were doing. So I looked at The Life and Suffering of Sabronte, which is a similar narrative game. The Wolf Among Us, Vampire Masquerade, and the other game I just played and loved was Disco Elysium.
Oh yes! Oh my god! All of these games that you mentioned, I don't think I know the first one that you said, but the other ones, Wolf Among Us, Disco Elysium. Oh my god, Disco Elysium! What an absolute masterpiece! I loved it.
Wonderful game.
Yeah, wonderful. Absolutely. I mean, I could see besides these games that you mentioned, I can see that the first ones that you got addicted to, you said, I can see something there. Like you have a very strategic, maybe personality. You like those kind of games. SimCity is very strategic, even though it's like a resource management sim. Cultist Simulator is probably something very similar. I like those two, and I can understand the appeal absolutely. Yes. But yeah, have you ever played Sunless Sea, or have you ever looked into Fail Better games?
I did play Sunless Sea. I might not have had the patience threshold to get where I needed to.
Yeah,
I
no, that's
felt I was blundering for too long.
okay. Yeah, no, I totally get it. It's also a very challenging game to just get through. Very punishing in a lot of ways. But yeah, Feel Better Games do great stuff with with their games when it comes to. They call them literary RPGs. I think so. Yeah,
Yes.
There's one moment that's stuck in my memory where you get to a specific, very white place. I won't say anything else. Very white place in Sunless Sea. And that made me fall in love with it, and it just requires a lot of focus and concentration. Also, getting into the system of the game, but once you do it, it's so deeply rewarding and also so beautifully written. So,
thank you.
So yeah, I do recommend it.
I'll get back to you.
But there's that interesting shift that I always discuss with every guest that comes onto the show, which is realizing. Going from playing those games, going from playing those chess games and maybe those tabletop RPG games to actually wanting to make them. So when was that for you? Was there like a aha moment, a light bulb moment, or something like that?
Yes, I suppose it was when I approached Chaosium with an idea for a scenario. So I'd produced a scenario called The Madman, which is a game, a title that's been used more than once for Call of Cthulhu, and I liked it, and I thought, okay, maybe I don't know how good this is, So when you when you ask yourself, am I capable of writing or performing some other role in the creation of an endeavor like this, you sometimes need a little bit of a shove from someone. So I sent it off to Chaosium, and the then editor, Lynn Willis, sadly departed, said, yeah, we like it. Why don't you pump it up to campaign length? So I pumped it up to campaign length and sent it off, and that was the moment where I realized, okay, yeah, this is the quality that's necessary. And I also had done that just because I felt that Chaosium weren't producing those massive campaign length scenarios that they used to, and that's what I love about Chaosium, particularly the Masks of Nyarlathotep.
Masks of Nyarlathotep, I played that one.
Yeah. Shadows over Innsmouth and Horror on the Orient Express. Those are classics, and I just felt it's something Chaosium do rather beautifully. So it was also missing something that a favorite games company weren't doing, and wondering if I could fill that hole.
Interesting. Okay.
And like you, and if you're running games and playing games, and I do, you're always writing.
Exactly.
You're always writing, and it's a great habit to have, even when you're just writing for the 5 or 6 other people in your group. It's a lovely thing to do, and we really appreciate it from the people who put so much effort into the games. And likewise, they appreciate it when you reach that level of investment where you write too. And so that's, I think, what makes the games world tick, that ability to put so much effort into things we love, even when we know it's not going to reach a mass audience, so that when we do produce something that, this game has now got to Steam. I didn't think that would ever happen. I didn't think I'd ever do a computer game. But now it's reached that point, you feel that, you feel you've sort of earned it because you've just been putting in the hard yards when you weren't seeking any wider audience.
Yeah, no, that's such a great reflection there. Like it's always appreciated when you put that level of passion into something. And then also like what you said about, you're always writing when you're running a game, and it's true. You're always telling a story. You're always kind of thinking with your mind, how can I make this compelling? How can I make this character involved? How can I make this player have an enjoyable experience? So you're always thinking that way. And that's why I think there are a lot of overlaps between game design for tabletop and game design for video games. But let's get there, actually, and let's get into the thick of the episode, which is talking about the development side. So let's get into chapter 2, as I like to call it. What would you say is the biggest development challenge you've overcome while working on HPL? Something that maybe you weren't expecting given your tabletop background. Of course, moving from there to game design comes with its own set of challenges, but I'll leave the word to you.
Yes. The most specific thing, there are a few things that are challenging with a new field and a new project, but most of them I had transferable skills, if you like. But the thing that I had not had experience for was the decision tree.
Ah, yes.
So in the game, you're making decisions constantly, big and small. Typically 4 decisions. So those 4 decisions take you to 4 different spots. A couple of times,
Nodes.
well, more than a few times, those 4 decisions will then ask you to make 4 more decisions. And now you've got 16 spots in 1 or 2 places in the game. Those 16 ask you to make 4 more. Now you've got 64 decision points. And you are just one person doing this. There's no, despite the name, why not AI doesn't mean why not artificial intelligence. I will tell you that. There was none used in the making of this game. And you quickly realize, all right, I need to break this in. And we were working with a Spanish company on the computer side called Pixel Ratio. Really good company. They've done a lot of games. And they provided me a bespoke tool to write this in. It looks like a wiring diagram. If I showed you it, it looks like a wiring diagram. 4 nodes going off to those 4, off to those 4.
Yes.
On each of those nodes, I can give rewards. So when you're playing the game,
beautiful. Okay.
Your character has 5 characteristics, which are body, resolve, charisma,
insight,
mind, and insight. Yes, exactly. So we've all seen role-playing games of these kind. Those are the 5 things that define you. They go from 0 to 10. Try to keep them high. And so in those 64 points, for instance, I had to make 64 distinct outcomes. I was trying to hold myself to the standard of, look, if the player plays it, we know players like me can be a little insistent on when they play a game. So those 64 points had to give 64 different decisions. That was the tricky bit, to make a game that felt as open as possible, while at the same time keeping it on those rails. And again, a little similar to tabletop role-playing, although there you have that wonderful human interface of the keeper or the games master who can react to the unforeseen. Here I wanted the game feel as real as possible, feel like you're sitting opposite someone and that every decision matters. Because when you play a game and you see, oh gosh, that didn't really matter, there's a little bit of you feel a little deflated, don't you?
Yeah.
Or when you're trying to reach a point, well, maybe if I do this, I can succeed.
Yeah. And
you play the game for another 20 minutes to reach that point again, and you realize, no, I can't get by that point. That's what I was trying to... that would be the challenging point that you asked me about, to try to make the game just as open as possible.
Yeah, and I think it's a great point, because there are some games out there, and a lot of them, some of them come to mind, but one of them is definitely, I would say maybe Heavy Rain. It has that too. There are some choices that are maybe relevant to, or they reward you in terms of telling you something about the character, and they reward you that way, but they don't necessarily have any kind of outcome on the story, which some people might like, but some people, like me, for example, might be like, okay, so what's the point? What was the point of this choice? You don't really see it reflected after, and it doesn't really change the character much. It doesn't really create a different types of character development, because usually these characters are set into stone. Usually, so yeah, it's always nice to find a game that knows that gap and tries to address it. I think it's a very important thing.
When I say, and when I say I didn't have a huge gaming background, I know plenty of people who do. I spent a lot of time talking to them before I put pen to paper. And one person, a friend of mine, Lee, said something that really stuck with me. They said they love a game where a seemingly inconsequential scene right at the beginning echoes right at the end.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So
It sticks in your memory as a player, especially in games, in video games. It just sticks because you are living that story. You remember that from the beginning, and then it has an impact, and then you're like, oh my god, yes. Just like reading a good book, really.
Just like reading a good book or watching a film, you just feel, oh gosh, I'm in good hands. You know, the director or the author, they know they really care about what they're doing. So that stuck with me, and yes, and I think it's the big and small. If I can give you a second answer to that question, though.
Yeah, sure.
The other thing that I realized quickly that you can do in gaming that you can't do, I don't think, well in film or fiction, or even in tabletop role-playing, is how do I look at a story through different eyes? And this story has three main characters, Mark, Anna, Victor. You get to play with all three. They are very different people. You will get a very different story when you play them. Anna is an artist. Mark is a veteran of the Great War. We're in 1929, I should say. And Victor is a scholar. They all know each other. And when you play Mark, Anna and Victor will play key roles in the story. You will have a relationship with them. You will need to manage that relationship. You'll see a score ascribed to it. It will go up and down based upon your decisions. You may try and treat them well. You may try and treat them a little more loosely. You may be a little harsh upon them at times.
Okay.
Now, when you've played Mark and you've told that story, maybe you play Anna next. That's recommended. Those two characters play first. But as soon as you play Anna, you know things about her you would never know when you play Mark. Now, I think that's fascinating because it speaks to our lives. You know, we try to put ourselves in other people's shoes. We try to see other people's viewpoints. We want to, hopefully. Some of us can be very good at it, but how good are we? And
you're not in that person's mind anyway.
No, you're not. And that to me was fascinating because you can go through that story. So you go through again the story as Anna, let's say. You see moments where you, as Mark, know she left you for a moment to do something or to see someone. Now you see what it was.
Yeah.
She seemed to have a predilection for this or that. Now you know why that was. I think all the characters care about each other at some level, even though it might not be quite apparent. There was a movie that tried to do this. I don't know if you've seen it, and it was a Ridley Scott movie called The Last Duel.
I did not. I have not seen it, but I will.
It had Matt Damon, Adam Driver, and Jodie Cromer, and it was supposed to be the last legal duel fought in medieval France. And it was fought over a woman's honor. Jodie Cromer plays Matt Damon's wife, and Adam Driver is his liege lord. And there is a key moment where she may or may not have been treated very badly. And you saw the story from his viewpoint, Matt Damon's, then Adam Driver's, then Jodie Cromer's. It worked at moments. It was very unusual, but it also felt a tiny bit repetitive. And I think gaming allows you to do that without that repetitiveness.
Yeah, I see that, and a lot of books try to do that when they give you different POVs and such, and they try to put you in different characters' shoes. But to me, it always does sound repetitive. There's always that, or feel repetitive. There's always that one character that you relate with the most, and that you feel like he's the one that you like. But then the others, they don't feel as strong or as fleshed out, or maybe you just don't like them as much. But in gaming, you can kind of dive into them. You can give them their own motivation. You can help the player identify with those characters more because they are often playing in the shoes of those characters. There's a game that tries to do that, and I think it does it well to an extent. It's called, well, you probably know it. It's The Last of Us Part 2.
Oh, yes.
Yes, don't know if you played it or if you've seen any playthroughs, but it does try to do that. It tries to put you into the shoes of two different characters at two different parts of the story and moments of the story. And I'd argue it does it very well, but you clearly are on one side rather than the other. But it still does it in a very fascinating and interesting way.
Yeah.
So I do recommend that you check it out. Now, related to this development challenge question that I asked you, there's another one, but I will ask you in a little bit. First, I'm curious about one thing. You refer on the Steam page to HPL as oversized narrative RPG. Can you explain that term? What do you mean by oversized?
Well, I suppose the first is, I would say it should translate to playing a campaign rather than playing a scenario.
Okay.
I can give you a very accurate metric that the game has 170,000 words.
Okay.
So that might be equivalent to 4 novels. Hopefully you get your money's worth. Mark's story has 90,000 words, Anna's 70. Victor's is a crisp 30.
Okay.
And early on, when I was talking to the team, Jean-Martial, the creative guy, Laurent has Jorda, who I worked with, has a huge amount of games playing experience. So I was working with him the whole way to keep me honest.
Okay.
Yeah, Tim, don't lose yourself in your artistic. Garrett, people want decisions, Tim. These are games players, Tim. So he was my conscience. No, I quickly worked out that this was going to be a huge game. So it took 18 to 24 months to write, and then it went into a slower phase where we were getting all our ducks in the row with regard to art and such like that. I'll also point that it's got its own soundtrack, brand new soundtrack from a very good composer, Pierre Esteve. And we really went to town on illustrations. So to try and get a real sense of time and place, we paid for, I should say, Alamy, to get hundreds of contemporary illustrations, which we then were able to add some animation to, and each character has their own filter, so that when you're playing Anna, Mark, and Victor, it feels very different. I feel that it's completely immersive.
Nice.
So I suppose that's the narrative oversize.
Yeah. But yeah, now I've been circling around this question for most of the episode, but I'm actually curious to know how much of the game, or at least of the game's mechanics, if you had, of course, any influence on those, and I think you might have, was inspired by the Call of Cthulhu tabletop RPG?
Yeah, good question. A fair bit. We spoke about the characteristics there.
Insight that comes to mind. Absolutely.
No, absolutely. I mean, body, you could say, is strength in con, and resolve is pow in Call of Cthulhu, and so on. But more than that, more than the sort of awarding and punishing points, there were a few other points where I leaned into Call of Cthulhu, but also Lovecraft's fiction. It's, for instance, when you gain a book in the game, you're gaining books and items and so forth. When you gain a book, I was quite careful to try to make sure that you give the player the choice of how much they read it. And
I love the book reading mechanic in Call of Cthulhu, by the way. It's something that I really, really love.
Me too. So I wanted to recapture that. So at times the book will say, the story will say, do you have some time? Do you want to go back to? There's a book called Memories of Loose Skin in the game. Do you want to read? Do you want to spend the evening reading that, or not? And if the player does, they will be rewarded. But they will also, as we know, your sanity begins.
Your sanity goes down.
So I wanted to give that feel to the game, and similarly, hope the game goes for a feeling of sort of fascination and introspection, and that feeling of I need to investigate this, at the same time I'm unwilling to do so. And again, the three characters approach that from a different viewpoint. Mark is the stalwart citizen. He is perhaps you and me, the everyman.
Okay. Yeah.
The 1930s matinee idol, if you like.
Okay.
Anna is she has a slightly as an artist, she has a better feel for things, let's say. She might understand things that Mark doesn't. And Victor has I don't want to give too much away, but perhaps Victor has a boldness that could get him into trouble. So each three of these, or a confidence, each three of these approach the game from a different viewpoint. But I did want to capture that feeling of a Lovecraft story where, we might have an idea where it's going, but we will struggle against. We will struggle to show that humanity matters.
Okay, yeah. No, and I love that. And again, big fan of the book reading mechanics and the sanity mechanics. I think Call of Cthulhu as a tabletop RPG is very fascinating. The way they've adapted the Lovecraft lore and the Cthulhu mythos into something playable for players. I've always loved what Chaosium have done there. But yeah, so we're near the end now, and we're approaching what I call chapter 3, which is all about reflections. But I do have one question to help open that part of the episode, that last part, I would say, which is something that maybe someone has already asked you, or maybe that you've already thought about yourself. But what learnings will you take from video game design that you think you will apply to tabletop game design going forward? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Yes. So the thing I loved about the project was working with other creative people in an organized fashion. And when I say organized, it's beyond the kind of work we might do as a gaming group where we put our heads together. Yeah. So here I was working with people with very different skill sets. People who've come from the film industry, from the magazine industry, from the gaming industry, from the IT creative side, who've all seen different games and different ways of doing things, and they've all been, they've been through the mill. They've had successes, they've had failures, they've seen what's worked and what hasn't worked, and you're trying to recapture, you're trying to bottle something and make it work, and the excitement there was really. When we spoke about the effort of writing all those words, and I did a lot more than the writing in the end, because the gaming tool allowed me to decide what pictures were being shown at what points and so forth. So there was a lot of involvement I had even after the writing was done. Now, I think the lesson I will learn is what I've learned from Juan and Laurent and Jean-Marcel and Pierre and others on this project is the passion they've brought to their piece. The lesson is how we all capture, how we can do this in a creative field. I've been a project manager in the City of London, and you need to be on the ball, you need to hit deadlines, you need to pull together some people with very different skill sets. But when a creative fashion, I think you can also give people more space and give them longer to explain themselves. Let them go down rabbit holes. It was a lovely experience. Nice. From someone who's worked in an era in a workplace where that wasn't an option.
Yeah, of course.
On time, on budget. It was seeing that work in the creative field was the first time I'd done that.
Really interesting.
And it gave me, it gave me so much respect for people who try and do what they do. Because people are very quick to put the boot in a movie that didn't work. But at the same time, that's someone's love, and it might be one of the greatest things they ever do in their life. Yeah. No matter that it didn't quite hit the spot. it's taught me it's taught me. I mean, my goodness, the effort that goes to getting something over the line.
Mm-hmm.
It's immense,
Yeah.
and we loved working with each other from day one to day whatever it was, 1,000.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really great thing that you said. The fact that the love that people put into these things, getting something over the line, I think it's really valuable, and it takes a lot of effort. And I know a lot of people in my audience are going to be able to relate with that as developers themselves. And conversely, on the other side, what do you think is something from tabletop design that helped you, or that game designers on the video game side could learn from you in this specific context?
Oh, good question. I'd be hesitant to say someone could learn something from me. Always,
Or from tabletop design, just in
yeah,
general.
yeah. So I think tabletop role playing still has an advantage over almost any other storytelling media, which is that it's always got a human involved at every viewpoint. And when you're operating on the same wavelength, magic can happen. You can have, you or I might be looking to play in a session or run a session. We've got an idea how it's going to go. It goes in a completely different direction.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful. And
you embrace it, yeah.
And you embrace it. And there's a trust and an ability. The only thing I can liken it to is a really good band, a music band, who trust each other so much. Mm-hmm. They can go in a certain direction. They can extemporize on stage. They can do better music live than they do recorded. They thrive off that atmosphere. That's the only thing I've ever been able to think of. Tabletop role-playing can do that. Now, how do you seed that into a computer game? I think you try and make the game feel just as open as possible. Mm-hmm. And we found a common reference point of Disco Elysium, which did that through some lovely viewpoints. There would be odd humor, there would be sudden horror, there would be strange detours, there would be strange backstory that you might or might not understand.
Completely strange detours and backstories, yeah.
Yes. And hopefully in this game, I am able to tell a story that feels really rich around these characters. Mm-hmm. I tried to create lots of non-player characters, lots of period setting. I have read a huge amount about the 20s. I tried to bring that sort of storytelling through a subtle viewpoint. So a conversation might tell you something about women's emancipation or voting rights or prohibition or the Wall Street crash. Mm-hmm. All that is in the game. I hope it tells an interesting story. And I hope it does it in the right way without browbeating the player and telling them, shut up, I'm about to tell you something interesting. Hopefully they learn about it in a really fluid way. That's I think what tabletop can do. Mm-hmm. And that what film and book can sometimes be a little heavy-handed about.
Yeah, I like the perspective. And one thing that I always liked about tabletop the moment I approached it is, I mean, the theater of the mind stuff. Like you can have designers tell you exactly how a game should look, but few things beat your own imagination when you're actually imagining those characters and living them and actually making every single choice that comes to your mind. If you want to just blow up a factory in the middle of a Call of Cthulhu scenario, you can just do it. Maybe you won't, but you could just do it. Whereas a game is a lot more railroady because, for obvious reasons. But yeah. Right. So I think the heart of the Indie Diarist is this question. I always love to ask it to everybody. In your case, it's slightly different. But so, Tim, just very honestly, why are you a game designer, game developer? What drives you forward? Why do you do what you do?
I just love stories. I heard a quote once, I forget who it was, but it stayed with me. It could have been even a character in a book, but it says, we as human beings, the heart wants love and the head wants stories, and I don't think life is a lot more complicated than that. And when I'm hearing or telling or listening to a story, I Come Alive and books and good fiction and good, and when you're talking to friends and understanding people, that's all there is for me. And if I can tell a story, I'm never happier. I spend 25 hours a week writing, and I'm never happier. And it's a little difficult to explain, but it tickles something in my brain. I just want to find the words. I want to find the language. Just before we spoke, I'm reading some Nabokov short stories, and it just stops me short. How can someone capture the human experience like this? I mean, that's I'm never going to do what Nabokov could do, but when you can aspire, you can do your best. The other thing is just try and create. We all consume so much, don't we? There's so much we can consume. Just if you can put something out there, even that awful film that we're all mocking, whatever it is, they tried, they did something, they got it over the line, they got it there, they did it, and maybe the next one will be better. But if not, they did that.
I can absolutely relate with everything you say, and I just finished the book called "This Is How You Lose the Time War." You probably know it, but the language in that book is just amazing, and it captures the relationship between the two protagonists in such a lyrical way. It inspired me so much, and it just as you say, reading a story makes me come to life. It's something that is very difficult to explain for someone who doesn't experience it, but I'm sure a lot of people listening right now know exactly what that is. Okay, so time for a final question for you, Tim. This is called The Indie Diarist. This podcast is all about diaries and stories. So if this were your final diary entry, what's one message you'd leave for players or other developers?
I think the thing that always drives me is know your characters. If you don't know and care about your characters, you don't have a story. And here, getting in the heads of not one but 3 characters, and then all those around them, that was a joy. And I love the fact that modern computer gaming still has some space for old-fashioned storytelling.
Okay, perfect. And as someone said during a seminar at the London Film School a few years ago, story is character, and it's something that's been resonating with me for all these years. But well, thank you so much, Tim. It was beautiful to have you on the show. It was such a lovely episode. Maybe we ran a little bit over the usual time, but I think it's something unique that I haven't had in the show ever since I founded it. Just someone from Tabletop talking about game design. It's been fascinating. So time for some parting words for this epilogue of the episode. Where can other people find you or your team? And if they do, what is the best way to support you?
So I think simply the HPL page on Steam. HPL Nyarlathotep Rising is the name of the game. Pop a question there. We'll find you there.
Okay, perfect. And of course, I'll put some links in the description of the episode so people can find you and check you out. Now, wishing you the best day you could ever have. Bye, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the episode, and I'll see you on the next one. All right, everybody. Hello, and that's a wrap on another episode of the Indie Diaries podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you for Tim for coming to the show and dedicating us some of his time. I think this was an interesting one. Personally, in reflection, I'm thinking it's always interesting to see how different parts of creativity and the creative industry can all kind of feed into game design somehow. And of course, between tabletop design and video game design, there are a lot of overlap. There are a lot of crossovers, and I think we've captured some of them during the course of this episode. This was a really interesting one, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. So if you did, please support Tim and his team at Why Not AI. Go and check out HPL, Nyarlathotep Rising, and please make sure to check the links in the description of the show and all of that jazz as usual. As when it comes to the show, you can support me in various different ways. You can go on patreon.com, you can go on Discord and join the Discord server. You can follow me on social media, Threads, Blue Sky, whatever, but also leave a rating on Spotify and whatever you get your podcast, because that pleases the gods, the elder gods of the algorithm, I would say. So yeah, and so you can find a lot of links in the description of the show, but also on theindiediaries.com. Of course, I'm ramping up the efforts on my YouTube channel, so you can find a lot more content there, and you will find a lot more throughout the course of the year. But if you're an indie game developer yourself, please get in touch, because I will always find a spot to help you tell your story to the world and just share, spread the word about your projects. See you next time.